Okay guys, Rogers here. This is video number 3 for the shimming process, right? I'm gonna cover a few things in this video, but I decided to do it a little differently than I originally expected to, right? So I was gonna talk about both the spur and the sector gear and show you me doing the measurements, but honestly, if you understand what was happening with the good old bevel gear here, then that shouldn't be necessary. You're gonna use similar use the same techniques for taking measurements for the others. Now I am going to talk about the things to look out for and how to deal with it, and all that kind of thing, but I'm not going to actually show me taking the measurements. If you need a little brushing up on that, go back to the bevel video and it'll clear it up for you. If not, leave a comment for me and I'll see if I can clarify things. Veterans, guys who have a lot of experience shimming and everything, there's one thing that I'd like to pass on to you guys, and that's going to be about the bevel gear and its relation to the motor pinion, right? But other than that, you might already have a good idea of what to look out for with the gears. And if that's the case, you might stick around because I'm going to show how I do the math and how I do the thinking behind behind tolerancing and clearancing everything, right? But if you're already real comfortable with it, you get the idea, then you may not need to watch this video, right? Let me see. Well, I guess let's get into it, right? If I come up with anything else I wanted to say, I'll let you guys know. Okay, so the first thing, right, the bevel comment that I wanted to give you guys, right? And this is something I kind of left out of the last video. I didn't really mean to, but it was already such a long video, and I was rushing to get it done, so I didn't want to make it any longer. So now you get to see it in the third video. Anyway, all right. So it has to do with how much rock you're getting, right? I find that if you're getting only that much, to where maybe there's a little bit of a tippity tap, but I mean you just can't even see it. That tap might be made up in the rock of the inner race and its interaction with the balls in the outer race. So be really careful, how much rock you give. I find that you might need to give a little more than seems comfortable, right? So something kind of like that. Oh, but is that showing? You know what? It's giving me a little bit of trouble here, guys. I'm sorry. I always like to get eyes on it, so I'm kind of looking back and forth here. All right. Yeah, maybe a little too little. Kind of loose, somewhere in between that, right? But I would say leave it a little looser than you expect the first few times, and you might be surprised at the results, right? And when I say looser, remember this: let me show you this. What I'm getting at. Do not leave the total play loose, okay? I'm talking about the shims that go on the back here that connect it to the pinion. Those you might leave a little looser so that it doesn't grind as much, right? Bearings can be deceptive, so play with it, right? Start off loose, tighten it up. When you start hearing noise, then back it off some. Now, I mean, that's, when you're talking about rebuilding the box every time doing that, you may not want to do it. But I find that if you leave it a little looser than expected, you're probably not going to hurt anything. Whereas if you leave it real tight, you're more likely to grind up your motor pinion, and on a weaker set, of gears, you might actually thrash up the beveled gears pretty bad, right? In fact, I hope I can source it real quickly. I'm not gonna spend. Yeah, here you go. So you see the crazy shiny outer edge there and how chewed up it is? That's the product of leaving it too tight. Okay, and you can kind of see it flat cut off a lot of material there, right? That was one where this was an early one for me doing the dial, where I lifted it straight into the into the pinion, and I didn't leave much room, and I thought there was tap tap tap, but really the bearing case was moving, and it was way too tight. And so when I went in to put the motor in, it was always grinding, and I couldn't figure out where the noise was coming from, and it ended up really tearing up the gear there. But anyway, so that's what I have to say about the bevel gear. Just be careful with it, all that kind of thing, right? So now let's get into the real meat of it all. We're already 6:30 in, so I'm gonna try to speed it up here a little bit. If I leave anything out, or if you guys have any questions, remember you can always comment. I'm more than happy to answer your comments, and I'll probably get to them pretty quickly. Okay, so here's the first measurement you're taking. It's right here, this clearance between the spur and the bevel gear. Okay, now make sure that when you put your case together, that you put shims on the bevel gear, no shims on the spur, and when you set it up in the vise, make sure the spur gear is laying back in the case and that you're lifting it into the bevel gear. Okay, do not do it this way where it drops onto the bevel and you lift it off, because it will drop onto it and cock to the side and you're gonna get a bad reading. Okay, so remember, lift up into the bevel. So I already wrote down some numbers here just to speed things up for you. Okay, so let's say when you lifted the spur here into the bevel, right? So when you picked up this axle and it picks up into the spur, you got 20 thousandths, right? Okay, the next step is you're gonna find the total free play. You're gonna yank out the bevel gear, okay, and then find the total free play, right? No shims, okay? In this case, let's say I found 50 thousandths, okay? Now, I like to back the spur off of the bevel about 5 thousandths, okay? And that gives room for if there's a little bit of wobble when they spin, right? If the gear, depending on how well the gears are manufactured, some have a little bit of wobble, right? And then the bearings will let it move some, so leave a little space for it. So 15 thousandths of a clearance backed off, so bringing the spur down. Now we're talking, I want to put 15 thousandths of shims on the bottom side of the spur gear here, okay? Now, it was 50 to close the case up, okay? I wanted 3 thousandths tolerance, right? And that's when everything is shimmed up. I only want this to move 3 thousandths of an inch, right? Okay, so here's how you do this. Make sure that tolerance is within the clearance between these two, right? So what I'm saying is, don't make the free play in your tolerance allow the spur to come up and contact your bevel gear, right? That's counterproductive. You're not trying to do that. So 15 on the bottom, 32 on top, right? That's going to give me what? 47. The total free play was 50. So now I have a 3 thousandths tolerance. And I know that even at its tightest, even when the bevel gear is lifted up the most, right? Somehow if it happens in operation, it's still going to have 2 thousandths play against, you know, from, or clearance rather, from the bevel gear, right? So hopefully you're not going to have contact. If you want to leave it a little looser, that's fine. Just kind of experiment. It also depends on you know, how thick are the teeth on the gear. If they're really thin, you might want to be careful how much space you leave, you know, you leave in the whole equation, so that you don't, say in a powerful setup, so you don't have it, you know, come in and wreck the gear like this one, it looks like. Alright, so here I got 108 thousandths. Here I have, oh well, that proved me wrong. Okay, 108 thousandths, but hopefully you guys get the idea, right? You know, you're making sure that if these are really thin, you might want to make sure you get the most meshing possible. So sacrifice a little scraping possibility, you know. Anyway, so the next little thing to watch out for, right, is anti-reversal latch. Okay, make sure, because it's likely the bevel is going to be pretty far picked up into the case so that it's loose enough on the pinion. Make sure that when you lift up your spur to get the proper engagement, that it doesn't start grabbing into the bottom of the anti-reversal latch. So grind it down, do whatever you have to do, right? Just make them agree with each other, right? Make them learn to like each other. So sector gear now, right? I think spur to case, spur to bevel, back space. Yeah, okay, all right, cool. So sector gear, same idea, guys. All right, same idea. It's not that crazy. And now that you know how you do the spur to bevel, I mean, it is almost exactly the same idea, right? You're gonna put all the shims on your spur, right? No shims on your sector. Close your case, okay? Lift the sector, lift it into the shimmed tight spur gear, okay? And that will give you your, in this case, sector to spur, right? You know, and let's say, I mean, it'll just write it out this way if you have to. It'll help you out. So it'll give you your sector to spur movement, right? And then you're gonna take out your spur, and you're gonna drop your sector back in, right? Okay, and then that bolt, there we go. Bolt that guy back down, find the total free play, and then that's it, baby. You know, it doesn't have to be too much more complicated than that. I don't think I'm leaving anything out. Like I said, if anything's unclear, if you run into any trouble, leave a comment, you know, or message me or something and let me know. And we can kind of talk about it and maybe walk through it. Something to look out for on the sector, right, is the sector chip. On this half of the case, around your sector, there may be a raised lip. I think they do that so that the tappet plate stays aligned with the sector chip cam thing. In any case, make sure that it doesn't grab when it's spinning around, right? You'll hear like a chick, 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 chick. It can reduce the, you know, the efficiency of the gear set, and it might make you think, you know, oh man, I'm not, you know, I tied the shims down too tight, you know, but really it's just your spur gear fighting with you, okay? So make sure that that's not happening. Also, make sure that your piston alignment, make sure that it's not, you don't have it shim so low that you're only catching a small, you know what, that's a bad place to do that. Let me show you up here. Make sure that you're not grabbing super low, right? There we go, that's better. Super low, it's where you're only getting part of it, right? But then make sure you're not going way too high as well. And then on pistons with rails on them, like reinforcement rails, make sure that you don't get it to where you shim it to where it grabs the friggin' reinforcement rails, you know, because then you can cause some serious damage doing that, because you'll fling your gears right into it. Let's see. I had something pop into my mind I wanted to say. I can't remember. I might put it in the description if I come up with it. So remember, test roll by hand first, and then something I like to do is to have a whole bunch of stock parts, right? Have a stock build, stock piston, real, you know, weak spring, nothing crazy. Have a low power battery, slam it together, right? And roll it over, right? You know, run the gearbox and see, is there any gear whine, right? Because it should show up even on a low build like that. Then go, you know, and especially if it grabs the piston or anything, if you use a weak battery, you know, and nothing crazy on a piston that doesn't matter, then you know, okay, if I damage this piston, you know, if something's off, it's not such a big deal, right? Because that's not the final build, right? You know, all right, so no gear whine, all right, blast it all apart, and then do your final process. I'm going to do a video on how I like to do the final build processing, like all the little things that I check, and, you know, kind of a checklist for you guys. Now, suggested videos, right? I like Kalashnikov 1. He has great examples of guns that are running, you know, real clean, that are just that total, just tap, tap, tap. All you hear is the compression. And then he has really good tuning tips. In fact, I learned a few of my tricks from him. Buddy, I'm probably, if you see this video, I'm probably going to mispronounce your name, but Mekii, that's the best way I can think of it. Maekii. Man, he has great videos, and one of them, in fact, is really important, right? And it's your motor grip connecting with the body of the gun, the metal body. You need to make sure that they fit properly. I really suggest you go check out his video, because he has a really wonderful method. I think I may have mentioned it in a previous video. He also has great tuning tips, and then good examples of guns running, right? You know, for a sound reference, or if you just want to sit and ogle at it and say, "Ooh, that sounds great." Anyway, so man, I think that's about it, guys. I can't come up with anything else off the top of my head, but like I said, if you're still not sure about the dial, go check the bevel shimming video. I actually show what's going on. You know what? I'm gonna zoom out here. I'm gonna show y'all, for you guys that aren't already familiar with this setup, what it looks like. Okay. Uh-oh. Well, crap. Here we go. Okay, so first of all, you can see that this is just a standard vise. I got one with a real big anvil, as they call it, I believe, so that it would have plenty of space to fit the next piece of the equation, right? And this is the dial indicator, which you've already seen in the previous video, and the base, okay? And then you get this, you know, it magnetizes on, and then boom, it's sitting steady. So mine came with a, it was on the floor, I must have thrown it away. Okay. It came with a plastic washer right here that when you tighten this down, it would start breaking and it'd come loose, right? And what was happening was, when it would come loose, oh, let's wait for everything to stop moving, right? You see that? When it's loose, the whole equation's loose. Have fun finding your zero now, right? So make sure you tighten the equation down. This one's with a 13mm wrench, right? And that'll allow you to, you know, have a real sturdy, steady base and everything. Okay, that's it, guys.